Today is November 11th, which means that it is Veterans Day, a day to remember and to thank our veterans. Joining us live now to share his story is Eric Lionheart, a former combat controller and founder of the First There Foundation. Eric, first and foremost, before we begin, thank you for your service. Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you. It was my honor to serve this country, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Now, starting us off, tell us about your story.
Well, how much time do we have? But yeah, I was an Air Force combat controller. I started off in the Air Force in '98, and I didn't have any plans to really stay in the Air Force that long. But 9/11 took place on my second enlistment, and all the patriotic bones in my body, caught on fire, and I cross-trained into combat control, which is Air Force Special Forces. And after 2 years of that rigorous training program, I began to go to war, and all my wartime was in Afghanistan.
Very, absolutely inspiring. Now, tell us a little bit more about this foundation that you founded.
Sure. Now going on 3 years, when I left the teams, again, a lot of people don't know about combat control, so I'm very thankful for your network to think about me and my foundation and my guys. So my first supervisor committed suicide 6 months after he left the teams. His name was Chris Rush. And later on that year, another friend of mine, another teammate of mine called me, and he was on the brink of committing suicide. Those calls are very tough. And if anybody's been on the phone with a person that's on the brink of ending their life, it's a very helpless and frustrating situation. And I just I just needed to do something. First There was born out of necessity. I've been blessed that with some help from friends and on my board, we've been going on 3 years, and we help my guys in my community and their spouses and sometimes children get the help they need.
Well, I'm so sorry for your loss. But I want to ask, though, what kind of struggles or challenges do veterans often face after returning home to civilian life?
I think it's a big ball of mixture in there. It's loss. Well, when you leave the teams, for example, the military, there's loss of camaraderie, there's a loss of trust, purpose, trying to find a job. Now you were on this high adrenaline, especially during the height of the war. 6 months of a deployment, your adrenaline's through the roof. Then you come back home, and you're back down to zero. And you're trying to get back into regular life. We You don't realize how fast life moves when you're deployed. So a part of that, and some of the war stuff, for me, for example, was survivor's guilt. I lost a few teammates of mine, and I felt really guilty that I lived, and I struggled with that quite a bit. So it's just a mixture of things that these men and women go through.
Absolutely. There's so much that you veterans go through. As ordinary American civilians, what can we do to help and to support our veterans?
It's a great question. I think being good Americans, right? I mean, this is our country, and then we have, regardless of, especially right now with the election, people just get so divided and caught up on the little things. But this is our country, and we got to take care of it. And we have our problems like any other country does, but this is the greatest country in the world. And I think to honor veterans is be a good American. So the sacrifices that some of these people paid, the ultimate sacrifice, it wasn't made in vain.
Absolutely. And Eric, you mentioned as well, of course, you were a combat controller. And as you said, not many people actually know exactly what that is. Could you share a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So Air Force has ground guys, believe it or not, and our main purpose is the ground to air interface. So, for example, it's a 2 year training program. Then you get sent to an operational team, and then when you get deployed, you get attached to either Army Special Forces team, a Navy SEAL team, a coalition Special Operation Force, and you go out. You're just another team guy. You can fill in any spot on that team. So you could be a driver, a gunner, a breacher, whatever that team needs. But what makes it special is that when we do get in a firefight and things are bad, we're the guys on the radio controlling anything that flies, and we can bring in ordnance on the enemy. close air support, or we can bring in medevacs. Anything that flies, a combat controller handles. So you imagine that fourth dimension of, you have the regular battlefield, you're shooting and moving, but now you have the air that's above you, and you're controlling, you're responsible for the safety of the pilots up there and all the aircraft. So if you're bringing in gun runs or dropping bombs, you have to keep that all in your head while you're shooting and moving, communicating with your teammates. So it's there's only about 300 to 350 combat controllers per year, because it's such a tough job, and it's a shame that it's not advertised more, because the capabilities that a combat controller has on the battlefield are out of this world. It's almost like science fiction, to be honest with you.
Absolutely incredible. The work you do is, I think, crucial. This Veterans Day, Eric, what is your main message to our audience? What does Veterans Day mean to you?
It's freedom. It's like I said, we live in the greatest country in the world, and my message to anyone who's out there, it's a thank you for being great Americans. And it's we live, it's the home of the brave. And yeah, I'm honored that I was able to serve my country, and I was able to meet some of the most amazing men and women this country has to offer. And the sad part is some of them didn't come back. So we got to do our part to keep this country going, and keep it on the top of the food chain, for sure.
Eric, a very, very powerful message you send there to our audience and to Americans all around the country. Thank you for your service and all the work you're doing to help our veterans. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.